When a self-appointed security officer blocks a black woman's car in her parents' driveway, he thinks she's just another trespasser, easy to interrogate, easy to intimidate, easy to remove. What he doesn't know is that Naomi Parker has spent her career dismantling armed men who thought exactly the same thing. He shines a spotlight in her eyes. She warns him. He smirks. Seconds later, the neighborhood is watching a scene they'll never forget, and the real fight is only beginning. Now, before we dive in, let me know where in the world you're reading from, and if you're ready for more stories like this, don't forget to follow along, because tomorrow's story is one you will not want to miss. The sun had just slipped below the horizon when Naomi's sedan rolled onto Brookhaven Drive in Plano, Texas. It was the kind of street where kids still pedaled bikes in circles, where neighbors waved while watering lawns. Familiar. Safe. At least it used to feel that way. Her parents had been after her for weeks. Come home for dinner. Naomi, you work too hard. Tonight, she'd finally carved out space. Lasagna waited on the table. She parked in the familiar driveway engine, humming to Silent's hand, already reaching for her overnight bag. That's when the dark gray SUV appeared. Too close, too fast. Its headlights poured into her rearview mirror like floodlights, swallowing the comfort of home in a wash of white. Then came the mounted spotlight, brighter still, pinning her in place like a suspect on stage. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out mid-40s, pale, stocky, with the deliberate swagger of someone who confused presence with power. His black polo read Sentinel Shield Services, his belt heavy with gear. Legal in Texas. Yes, commissioned private security had the right to carry. But Naomi had seen that look too many times, a man who wore the holster less as a tool and more as an ego. Evening, he said, his voice flat as steel. "What's your business here?" Naomi didn't flinch. She raised her voice just enough to be heard over the glare. "This is my parents' home. I'm visiting." He stepped closer, hand hovering near his holster. Red body cam light, blinking. "Name?" Naomi tilted her head. "Who are you, Derek Whitlock?" "HOA security," he replied, as if the title alone should settle the matter. "We've had break-ins. You match a description." She almost laughed. She knew that phrase too well. A description. Always vague, always elastic, always fitting whoever they wanted it to fit. Tonight, it fit her. The porch light snapped on. Her mother, Evelyn, stepped outside, confusion written across her face. "Naomi? What's happening? HOA security? Thinks I don't belong," Naomi said evenly. Her father, Leon, followed, moving fast down the steps. "That's our daughter," he barked. "She grew up here." Whitlock didn't blink. His focus stayed locked on Naomi's spotlight, still cutting across her face. "Ma'am, I'll need to verify." "What exactly do you need to verify?" Naomi asked, her voice low, calm, but firm. "You've been told I live here. Twice. By the people who own this property. You don't get to escalate this because I don't look like you expected." His jaw flexed. "Step out of the vehicle." Naomi kept still. She catalogued the scene the way she had on dozens of tactical entries, angles, distances, holster type, which hand was dominant, who else had line of sight. She didn't need to reveal who she was. Not yet. 2 houses down, a door creaked open. Gabe Turner, longtime neighbor, stepped out with folded arms. "Derek, that's Leon and Evelyn's kid. Knock it off." Whitlock's eyes flicked toward him, then back to Naomi. "Sir, I have a job to do, and I have a neighborhood to live in." Gabe shot back. "And you're out of line." Evelyn moved off the porch, anger cutting through her voice. "Derek, I've lived here 22 years. No one else's guests get treated this way. Turn off the damn light." "Ma'am, I can't compromise officer safety," Whitlock replied. Naomi almost smiled. "You're not an officer, and no one here is a threat." The words landed. For the first time, he hesitated. He didn't back away, but the shift in weight was clear. His ego was screaming to press forward, but the truth was hanging heavy in the warm Texas air. He'd picked the wrong driveway. And Naomi knew this was just round one. 15 minutes after he drove away, the neighborhood started to exhale. Porch lights clicked off one by one, conversations drifted back inside, and for a moment it felt like things might settle. Naomi stayed in the kitchen with her parents, sipping coffee. She wasn't tasting, phone still open to the non-emergency line she'd just called. She logged everything, time, place, names. That was her training document, now fight later. Then the low rumble of tires broke the calm. Headlights cut across the street again, sharper this time, slower, deliberate. The same dark gray SUV swung wide, then stopped diagonally across the street and driveway, blocking both Naomi's car and the road itself. He wasn't done. Not even close. Unbelievable, Leon muttered, stepping toward the window. He's back. Naomi stood, voice flat. Of course he is. People like Whitlock don't leave. They escalate. The SUV door opened. Derek Whitlock stepped out, clipboard in one hand, the spotlight beam sweeping again across the driveway like he owned the block. Need to finish my report, he said flatly, as if that explained everything. Naomi stepped onto the porch, Evelyn right behind her. You could have finished it from anywhere else, Naomi said. Name, date of birth, current address. Whitlock rattled off like a grocery list, ignoring her words. Naomi folded her arms. You already know who I am. You've been told. By 3 people. And you don't have the authority to demand anything more. Whitlock's eyes narrowed. Refusing to comply is suspicious in itself. The words were thin, brittle, but they carried the arrogance of someone who'd repeated them 100 times before. From across the street, Gabe Turner reappeared, phone in hand, his voice slicing the night. Derek, this is harassment. You're pushing it. Whitlock didn't even glance at him. I told you to stay out of this, Gabe. Evelyn stepped forward, voice shaking with fury. I've paid HOA dues for 22 years. Not once have you pulled this on any other guest. You've decided my daughter is the problem because she doesn't look like you expect a resident to look. Whitlock's tone turned condescending. If you have a problem with policy, ma'am, take it to the board. I'm enforcing the rules. Naomi's patience thinned. Which rule? Show me the line in your handbook that says you can block a driveway, demand ID, and shine spotlights in a resident's face. You can't. Because it doesn't exist. Whitlock didn't answer. Instead, his free hand dropped low, resting fully on the grip of his sidearm. Gasps rippled through the air. Evelyn froze mid-step. Leon surged forward, but Naomi's hand came up like a stop sign. Stay back. Her voice changed lower, steadier, the cadence of command. You touch that weapon, Derek, and you're crossing into territory you are not trained to handle. Whitlock smirked, a mask stretched too tight. So, you think you're in charge here? No, Naomi said, calm as stone. I know the law is. Porch lights blinked on up and down the block. A woman in a bathrobe stepped outside, arms folded, whispering, What's going on out here? Gabe answered loud enough for everyone. Brent's playing cowboy again. Naomi didn't move. Her hands kept her palms visible, fingers loose. Every nerve was tracking Whitlock, the angle of his stance, the twitch in his jaw, the way his thumb grazed the holster strap like a trigger he couldn't quite pull. He wasn't steady. He was rattled, and rattled men with weapons were dangerous. You've been told 3 times who I am, Naomi said, voice even. Step back. You're not in danger. You're manufacturing one. Whitlock's laugh was short, hollow. What are you then, some kind of cop? Naomi didn't answer. Silence was a weapon, too. Gabe's voice cut in, police are on their way. Derek. I called them. That landed. Whitlock's eyes darted toward the street, then back at Naomi. The calculation was clear fight or retreat, but his pride screamed louder than reason. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, finally planting his feet. "We'll settle this right here." The words had barely left his mouth when he stepped forward. Fast, jerky, his hand dropping toward the holster strap. Evelyn gasped. Leon shouted. Gabe lifted his phone higher. Naomi's voice cut the night. "Stop. Right now." He didn't. He took one more step. Thumb brushed the strap. That was enough. Naomi moved. One fluid step, left hand snapping onto his wrist, right hand slamming down over the holster. Twist pivot lock, the kind of motion that was muscle memory, practiced 1,000 times in rooms far hotter than this driveway. Whitlock stumbled, elbow-trapped arm twisted across her torso. His clipboard clattered to the pavement. "Gun hands mine," Naomi said, voice low, but sharp enough for every ear around. Whitlock grunted, struggling, but the lock was clean. His options narrowed to two: give up or snap a bone. The neighborhood had gone silent, porch lights burning like spotlights, phones raised, eyes wide. And just as sirens began to echo faint in the distance, everyone knew this wasn't just a squabble in a cul-de-sac anymore. This was a reckoning. The sirens were still blocks away when Derek Whitlock realized he had lost control. His wrist locked in Naomi's grip, his holstered gun neutralized his clipboard sprawled on the pavement, and half the neighborhood staring phones raised eyes wide, silence thick as tar. "Step back," Naomi ordered, voice steady, the barrel of the weapon now pointed harmlessly toward the ground, but her stance saying everything. "You assaulted me!" Whitlock spat, his face red, breath heavy. "No," she corrected. "I stopped you from drawing on an unarmed woman in her own driveway. That's called self-defense." Gabe Turner stepped closer, phone up, recording without a shake. "Got it all on video, Derek. Every second." That did it. Whitlock's eyes darted toward Gabe, then back to Naomi, but before he could snarl another word, red and blue lights painted the cul-de-sac. Tires crunched to a stop behind his SUV. Two Plano patrol cars, engines idling, hard doors popping open. Two officers stepped out, hands hovering near their weapons, but not drawn. The lead officer, Ramirez, scanned the scene with quick, sharp eyes. "Everyone freeze," he called. Naomi reacted instantly. She eased the gun to the ground, slid it away with her foot, and raised both hands, palms open. Weapon safe. Magazine intact. Safety on. Her voice carried authority, clipped and professional. Ramirez's partner retrieved the pistol, checked the chamber, and holstered it in an evidence bag. Ramirez looked at Whitlock first. "You're not law enforcement. You're private security. Why was your firearm almost out of the holster on a residential street?" Whitlock tried for composure, but his voice cracked. Suspicious individual refused to comply. Officer safety demanded escalation. Officer safety, Ramirez's brow furrowed. "You're not an officer. And the individual you're calling suspicious was on her parents' property. Verified by multiple witnesses." "Misunderstanding," Whitlock blurted, eyes darting at the crowd. "Just a misunderstanding. Doesn't look that way from here," Ramirez replied. Evelyn found her voice. "That man pointed a light at my daughter, blocked her car, and tried to pull a gun in our driveway." Leon's voice followed, deep and hard. "And he's been strutting around here for months, like he owns the place." Neighbors murmured, agreement, phones still up recording. A woman whispered, "Finally, someone caught him," and another man added, "He's done for." "All right, one at a time," Ramirez said, lifting a hand. "We'll need statements from everyone." Naomi stepped forward slowly, hands still open. She disarmed him clean, Gabe added quickly, nodding toward Naomi. "Didn't hurt him, just stopped him. Perfect control. I've got the whole thing on video. Ramirez's pen paused mid-word. His gaze shifted to Naomi. You move like someone with training. Naomi gave a small nod. I've had training. That's all I'll say right now. But you can add this. He attempted to draw on me without cause, and I neutralized the threat, without injury. The officer studied her for a moment longer, then scribbled something. All right? We'll file this as an armed threat involving a licensed private contractor. HOA security or not, he can't operate outside the law. Whitlock scoffed, chest-heaving. This is all twisted. You don't know the context. Naomi met his glare without blinking. The context is a driveway, a spotlight, and an armed man who didn't know when to stop. Ramirez gestured toward the SUV. Mr. Whitlock, stay by your vehicle while we process statements. He obeyed, but his jaw was tight, pride boiling hotter than fear. He'd been humiliated. He'd been stopped. And the neighborhood had seen it. As neighbors lined up to give statements, Naomi stayed at the edge of the driveway scanning faces. Some she recognized from childhood visits, others strangers. But every one of them looked shaken and relieved. A woman in a denim jacket stepped forward quietly. Naomi, I'm Laura Green. I live 2 streets over. He hassled a delivery driver last month, made him unload everything on the sidewalk before he could leave. Same attitude. Naomi's eyes narrowed. Did you report it? Laura shook her head. Didn't think it'd matter. HOA just buries complaints. Naomi filed it away. Patterns mattered. Retaliation mattered. If Whitlock had a history, this wasn't just about her anymore, it was about everyone. By the time the officers finished, the street was alive with whispers. Kids peeking out from behind their parents' phones, still recording neighbors trading looks that said the same thing we've been waiting for this moment. Ramirez handed Naomi a case number. If you feel unsafe, we can increase patrols. Leon put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. She is the patrol we need. That drew a ripple of nervous laughter, but Naomi didn't smile. She kept her eyes on Whitlock, still standing stiff by his SUV spotlight, casting long, angry shadows. This isn't over, he hissed across the street. Naomi's voice carried calm and even. No, it isn't. But now, for the first time, the neighborhood understood they weren't just witnesses. They were part of the fight. And the HOA's dirty secrets were about to crawl into the light. The next morning, the neighborhood looked the same on the surface, neatly cut lawns, mailboxes lined like soldiers' sprinklers, ticking in the early light. But inside the Parker kitchen, the air felt heavier. Leon came in from the porch with a plain white envelope in his hand, no return address. He dropped it on the table like it was toxic. HOA notice, he muttered. Naomi slid it open with her thumb. The bold red stamp at the top shouted, Urgent Violation Notice. She skimmed the list, jaw tightening improperly. Stored trash bins, exterior light fixture, out of compliance, unauthorized vehicle in driveway. She set it down slowly. That last one's me. Evelyn's eyes flashed. They filed a violation because you parked in our driveway. Naomi nodded. Classic retaliation. He embarrassed himself, and the board is circling wagons. By mid-morning, her phone buzzed. Laura Green's voice came sharp through the line. You're not gonna believe this. I just got a violation too. Something about my flower bed not being regulation. I've had the same tulips for 8 years. They're sending a message, Naomi said flatly. To us, to anyone thinking of speaking up. They called an emergency board meeting tonight, Laura added. Closed session. Perfect, Naomi replied. That means they're nervous. Around noon, word spread. 3 more neighbors texted Naomi sudden violation letters, each more ridiculous than the last trash cans, paint shades, lawn edges too long. All dated that morning. all signed by the board. By 3 o'clock, Naomi decided it was time to go on offense. She dialed the HOA's main line, was routed to Janice Roberts, the board president. "This is Janice," the voice answered, clipped and impatient. "Janice, this is Naomi Parker. I'm Leon and Evelyn's daughter." A pause. "Yes. I heard there was an incident last night." "That's one way to put it," Naomi said. "Your contracted guard blocked me in my parents' driveway, tried to pull his weapon, and had to be disarmed. There's video. Police have the report. I'd like to know what steps you're taking." Janice's tone hardened. "Our security team operates under guidelines set by the board. If there was a misunderstanding, it can be resolved without making it bigger than it needs to be." Naomi let the silence hang before answering. "It's already bigger than you want it to be. The officers logged it. The neighbors recorded it. And now I'm aware of at least half a dozen residents with similar encounters. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a pattern." "That's a strong accusation," Janice said, though her voice wavered just enough to betray the crack. "It's not an accusation. It's evidence," Naomi replied. "And if your board thinks issuing retaliatory violations will scare people into silence, you might want to reconsider. Retaliation is its own legal violation, and it never ends the way you think it will." For a long second, only the hum of the line. "Then we'll be in touch." Click. Evelyn, listening from across the table, shook her head. "She's rattled." "Good," Naomi said. "Rattled people make mistakes." That evening, word spread fast. Board members arriving at the neighborhood clubhouse, arms full of binders and laptops, faces tight. Naomi pulled on a jacket. Leon raised an eyebrow. "Planning to storm the castle?" "Not yet," Naomi said. "I just want them to see me. Sometimes the best leverage is proximity." The three of them walked down the sidewalk, sunset, bleeding orange across the roofs. At the clubhouse, the long window glowed bright. Inside, the board clustered around the table, voices raised, hands chopping the air. Words leaked through the glass lawsuit. Liability. Contract review. Out front, Derek Whitlock stood with arms crossed, scanning the street. When he saw Naomi approaching, his jaw tightened. She didn't break stride, just met his stare long enough to let him know she wasn't hiding. Inside, Janice Roberts caught sight of her through the window and froze mid-sentence. She leaned toward the man beside her, whispering fast. His eyes flicked toward Naomi, then snapped back to his notes. Naomi and her parents walked slowly past, close enough to let the tension build, close enough that every board member could feel the weight of her presence outside their meeting. "They're already panicking," Evelyn whispered, almost smiling. "Maybe," Naomi murmured, "or maybe they're deciding who to throw under the bus first." They looped back home. The phone was ringing when they stepped inside. Another neighbor, another violation letter, another story of Whitlock hassling kids, delivery drivers visiting grandparents. The dominoes were starting to fall. Naomi set her phone down, eyes sharp, voice low. "This isn't just about a guard anymore. It's about who kept him here, who gave him cover, and why." And she knew the real war with the HOA hadn't even begun. By the end of the week, the neighborhood was buzzing with the kind of nervous energy people usually reserved for storm warnings. Lights stayed on later, porch conversations ran long, and the phrase, "Did you hear about Whitlock?" passed from lawn to lawn like a rumor everyone wanted confirmed. Naomi decided waiting wasn't an option. She called Laura Green. "Spread the word," she said. "My parents' house tonight, 7 o'clock. Anyone who's been hassled, fined, or threatened, bring them. No reporters. Just us." By sundown, folding chairs were squeezed into every corner of the Parker living room. The hallway was packed, the kitchen table stacked with coffee mugs and a tray of Evelyn's cookies. Naomi stood near the mantel, legal pad in hand, watching faces settle into nervous anticipation. Some were familiar neighbors from childhood. Others she barely recognized. But they all shared something in common. Each had a story. Laura started. 2 months ago, my son Marcus was walking home from basketball practice. Whitlock stopped him, said he matched a description. Made him dump his whole gym bag on the sidewalk. When I complained, the board brushed me off. A week later, I got a violation letter about my trash cans. Retaliation. Heads nodded around the room. A middle-aged man raised his hand. I'm Greg. I do HVAC. Last fall, I came here to service a unit. Whitlock forced me to show my license just to unload equipment. Said contractors had been suspicious lately. Never saw that nonsense in 20 years of work. An elderly woman's voice trembled as she spoke. I was visiting my grandkids on Elm Street. He followed me from my car to the porch, asking who I was, why I was there. I told him to speak to my daughter. He said she could explain it at a board meeting. The room murmured in outrage. Naomi wrote each story down page after page. Dates, times, names, details, patterns forming. Always the same script matched a description, appeared suspicious, refused to comply. Always vague, always aimed at the same kinds of people: black residents, Latino contractors, delivery drivers, visitors who didn't fit. When the last person finished, Naomi set down her pen and looked around the room. This, she said, holding up the notepad, is a record. And records matter. This is enough to put pressure on the board from every angle, legal, financial, public. But it only works if we stand together. A murmur rippled low but firm. They've been counting on us to feel isolated, Naomi continued. They've been counting on fear to keep us quiet. That ends tonight. We don't just respond to their violations. We file our own. With the city. With law enforcement. With anyone who'll listen. From the back, a voice called, "What about retaliation? You know they'll try." Naomi nodded. They might. But here's the difference now. Every letter, every phone call, every so-called inspection gets documented. And copies go straight to the city attorney's office. If they retaliate, they make our case stronger. Laura stood, voice strong. I've got a list started who's willing to testify if this goes to court. Hands went up around the room one after another, until nearly every person was counted. Naomi scanned the crowd. What had walked in as weariness was shifting now into resolve. Neighbors leaned together, swapping numbers, comparing notes. A single mom and a retired couple planned to share an attorney. Two dads talked about pooling resources to hire a reporter if the board stonewalled. Evelyn slipped Naomi a mug of coffee, whispering, "Look what you started." Naomi shook her head. "Look what they started. I'm just not letting them hide it anymore." The meeting went long. By the time the last neighbor left porch, lights glowed up and down the block, clusters of people still talking, exchanging numbers, whispering strategies. The neighborhood, for the first time in years, felt like a community. But Naomi knew Whitlock wasn't the only problem. He was a symptom. The disease was the board behind him, the shield that let him operate unchecked. And diseases didn't disappear because people talked. They had to be cut out. As she closed the door and stacked the empty chairs, her father spoke softly behind her. "You realize you're the one leading this now, don't you?" Naomi didn't answer right away. She stared at the stack of notes in her hand. The web of complaints, the repetition of matched a description circled again and again. Finally she said, "If that's what it takes." Outside, a car idled 2 houses down, headlights dark, a silhouette behind the wheel. Watching. Naomi slipped the notepad into her bag. "Let them watch," she whispered. "We'll make sure they see everything." The war with the HOA was no longer in the shadows. It was on record, and it was just getting started. The following week, The HOA board announced a special closed meeting at the clubhouse. No agenda, no explanation, just a printed notice on mailboxes and a blast email dripping with corporate jargon. Everyone knew what it meant. They were scrambling. By 7 o'clock, the clubhouse lot was full. Board members hustled inside with briefcases and laptops whispering sharp into phones. Out front, Derek Whitlock stood like a guard dog on a chain arms, crossed eyes scanning the street. Naomi didn't arrive alone. She walked with her parents on either side, and nearly 24 neighbors trailing behind, shoulder to shoulder, filling the sidewalk. Phones recorded. Voices whispered. Nobody was hiding anymore. Whitlock's jaw tightened when he saw her. "This is a private meeting," he barked. Naomi stopped 3 feet from him, calm and steady. "So is harassment on a private driveway, Derek?" "That didn't stop you." The neighbors murmured a low growl of agreement. Inside, through the clubhouse windows, Janice Roberts and the rest of the board stiffened when they realized half the neighborhood was gathered outside. She leaned toward another board member, eyes darting, words clipped. Panic had a look, and she wore it. The door creaked open. Janice stepped out, smile stretched too tight. "This is a board meeting. You can bring your concerns through the proper channels." Proper channels, Naomi cut, in voice sharp but controlled. "We did. We filed complaints. We sent emails. We called. And every time the board buried them. But now we have video police reports and witnesses. Those are the channels you can't bury." Applause broke out, scattered at first, then rolling through the crowd until it drowned Janice's protest. Whitlock snapped, voice booming. "This mob doesn't scare me." His hand twitched toward his belt, but this time Naomi moved first. "Don't," she said loud enough to freeze him mid-motion. "You've already been disarmed once in front of witnesses. Do you really want to replay that scene?" The crowd erupted. Laughter, shouts, cheers. Whitlock's face burned crimson. He stepped back, fists clenched, and for the first time he looked smaller. Janice tried to regain control. "This is out of order. The board will review the situation internally." "No," Naomi said. "You won't. The city attorney already has every violation letter you sent, every retaliatory fine, every report of Derek harassing delivery drivers, teenagers, grandparents. It's not internal anymore. It's civil rights. And you're liable." Gasps rippled through the board members visible behind the glass. One of them shoved his chair back, whispering urgently into a phone. Another buried his face in his hands. Laura Green stepped forward from the crowd, voice strong. "We're done being afraid. If you don't remove Whitlock and end these abuses, we'll remove you. Every single one of you." Dozens of neighbors shouted agreement. Some raised their violation letters high like protest signs. Phones angled for the perfect shot. Janice's mask cracked. "We'll review contracts immediately," she stammered. "You'll do more than that," Naomi replied. "You'll issue written notice to every resident clearing bogus violations. You'll release records of complaints filed and how they were handled. And you'll make it public, because if you don't, we will." The crowd roared chants of "public, public, public" echoing off the clubhouse walls. Whitlock lunged forward, voice raw. "You think you've won. You don't know who you're messing with." Naomi didn't flinch. She stepped closer, lowering her voice until only he could hear. "I've been in rooms hotter than this facing men with more power and less sense. They thought the same thing you do. And they all ended the same way, stripped of authority, exposed for what they were. You're next." For the first time, he looked away. Police cruisers rolled up, then summoned by someone inside the boardroom, lights flashing. But this time, they didn't approach Naomi. They went straight to Janice and Whitlock, speaking low, taking notes. Phones captured every second. By the end of the night, Whitlock was escorted off the property. The board, pale and shaken, promised immediate review of contracts and policies. It wasn't justice yet, but it was the crack in the wall Naomi had been waiting for. Later on, her parents' porch, Naomi sat with a mug of coffee cooling in her hands. Leon leaned back, exhaling long. You know you could have walked away that first night. Let the system handle it. I could have, Naomi said. But systems don't change, unless someone forces them to. Evelyn reached over, resting a hand on her daughter's. You gave people their voices back. Naomi shook her head. They already had them. They just needed to be reminded they could use them. Down the street, kids rode bikes again. A neighbor waved. Life looked the same, but Naomi knew better. Something had shifted. Because this wasn't just a fight about one man with a badge and a gun. It was about power abused in plain sight. About silence and the cost of breaking it. About neighbors realizing they weren't alone. And, as the night settled over Brookhaven Drive, one truth lingered in the warm Texas air. Change doesn't start somewhere else. It starts here.